Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. I'm new Taylor. Look at this shine, look at this new gleam. Happy New Year. 2023, I hope it's a year full of tricks, full of taking, and I think it's gonna be the best year for trick-taking and climbing, shouting, ever, really. There's a lot coming down the pipeline, which sounds spicy and fun, and I can't believe how great it is, time to be alive, to play all these amazing trick-taking and climbing and shouting games. Anyway, I have not forgotten since the last video that I owe you a winner for Nikosu Dice, but let me be perfectly frank and perfectly Taylor. There's a lot of jokes and a lot of chuckles and a lot of guffaws, a few tee-hees thrown in the mix. There's just a lot to come through and pick through. I might have to show my friends and maybe gauge them. We might need a whole panel to see what the best joke is. So, still coming. So sorry. But today, we are covering what some people have called their favorite trick-taking game of all time. What some people have called maybe a title that might be the most title since the game. Or Go, you know? Go where? What a name. It is Tricktakers. That's right. A trick-taking game called Tricktakers. Whew! It is by Hiroken. And the hook is players are going to get dealt some cards, 5 if you wanted to know. And then after looking at your cards, you're going to draft a character, a trick taker. And they're going to have powers, they're going to have abilities, they're going to have different ways to score. It's wild. You know how when we were talking about Nikosu Dice, I said that game had a perfect amount of like depth and simplicity to it and kind of like a niceness to the rules. This has rules and rules to the rules. So let's go to the table and I'll teach you how to play. The deck in Tricktakers is 4 suits numbered 1 through 9. The black suit is trump, so it's stronger than these other 3 suits. Also, you have 2 white flag cards, which always lose the trick, and then 2 rare cards, which always win the trick. If multiple rare cards were played into a trick, it's the first one that wins. Here we have the game set up for 4 players, so each player is going to get dealt 5 cards from the deck. The rest of the deck just goes up here, because some characters interact with the deck through their powers. I'll explain all the powers in a little bit, because these are the 5 kind of base standard characters that the game wants you to use. They help showcase a good amount of the mechanics, and they kind of get you familiar with the game before you include kind of the additional characters, which are a little bit more wacky and have a little bit more depth to them. Each player is also going to be given 30 points to start the game with. Additionally, up here, we're going to have the 3 rounds and the crowns that can be given out per round. I'll explain what crowns are in a little bit, but overview of the game, we are going to be playing 3 rounds. Maybe the game can end earlier for certain win conditions, either character win conditions or crown win conditions. But essentially, we're going to be playing 3 hands of the game. Each hand is going to consist of players getting dealt 5 cards, them looking at it. They're going to pick one of the characters. So let's say the antler here looks at their hand. They have a rare. Maybe they're going to pick the king, and I'll explain kind of what each character does and why someone would pick it in a little bit, but say this person picks the king. They'll get some of the king set up and they'll do all their king stuff, and then it will go around to this Mickey character. Maybe they'll pick the gambler. They're going to get some stuff, like the gambler has a die. As you can see, it's a nice golden kind of die with some numbers on it. And then Crabs would pick someone, maybe they pick the resistance, and then finally the shield would maybe pick the hermit, and then if this character doesn't get picked, it's just out for this round. After players have picked their characters and done all the setup for their characters, then you're going to play tricks. You're going to play 5 tricks, and at the end of it, you're going to do certain things. So, first off, some players have conditions which let them win immediately, either in the middle of a hand or at the end of a hand or whatever it may be. And so you're going to check if that happens. If that happens, you're going to just stop the game right there. That person has won. If that hasn't happened, you're going to see who took the most tricks, not a tie. So maybe later on, this player took 3, 1, 1, 0. This player, the king, will win a golden crown. If it was like 2 tricks, and then maybe this person won a trick, no one would get the golden crown, it would just get discarded out of the game. And then any characters who took no tricks will get a black crown. There are only 2 black crowns to give out, and they're impossible to see with this black background, so maybe we'll put them here. But black crowns go to anyone who takes no tricks, and there's a little bit of fuzziness in that, which I'll cover a little bit later, but that's essentially what they do. And as you can see, that's pretty much it for the crowns. The crowns do a couple things. One, If you get 2 gold crowns at the end of a round, that's an instant win condition. If you get 3 black crowns at the end of a round, that is an instant win condition. And later, black crowns can be used to turn in for a kind of mulligan of a hand. So say you don't like the cards in your hand or something, you can actually turn in a black crown to discard and get cards into your hand from the draw deck. So crowns are useful for victory conditions early, and they also break ties for drafting cards or drafting rolls, and they are also good for mulliganing your hand later. So that's the flow. You always play 3 rounds. If none of the victory conditions are met and it gets to the end of the 3rd round, then it's just whoever has the most points. So to recap, you play 3 rounds. If any character condition or if 2 gold crowns or 3 black crowns happens, then that is an instant win condition. If not, at the end of the 3 rounds, whoever has the most points wins. So now let's maybe go into the rolls, and then we'll come back after I cover all the basic rolls. We're going to show a little bit of the gameplay. Then I'll show the extra rolls that come with the game. The first character we're going to talk about is the king. Their whole goal is just to win as many tricks as possible. As you can see on the bottom here, depending on the number of tricks they win, they're just going to get more and more points, all the way to winning 5 tricks or all the tricks in the hand. They instantly win the game. They have a couple cool things. If you pick the king in the previous round, that means you get to have the first draft of all the characters the next round. You just can't pick the king again. So one stipulation, but pretty cool power. The other thing is, after you pick the king, you get dealt this rare card that's only for the king. As you can see, it has a different back than the other suits or the other cards in the game. So people know that you still have it in your hand when you're playing. But you get dealt that, and you get to pick any of the other cards, the 5 previous cards, and you get to discard one of those. So you just kind of bolster your hand a little bit. And then finally, in the 3rd round, the king actually doubles the points it gets. So say in the 3rd round, the king got 3 tricks. They're not going to get 80, but they're going to get 160 points. When you pick the gambler, you first get 20 points, which is nice. And then you get to twice exchange any number of cards in your hand with the deck. So say you got dealt 5 cards and you don't like 4 of them, you can discard those 4, get 4 new ones, and then you can do that again. So maybe you discard 2 and you get 2 new ones. That's pretty nice. Then you're going to bid on how many tricks you think you're going to win. You get this die here, and it goes from 0 all the way up to 5. It's funny because you don't kind of need to bid 5, because if you win 5 tricks, you win the game. So you can just bid 0 through 4. Anyway, you're going to pick your bid. So maybe you think you're going to win 1 trick. If you hit your bid, the points over here is how many you'll get. So if you hit your 1 bid, you'll get 60 points. And then finally, with any points you have and the 20 points that you just got, you can bet on your bid, meaning maybe you bet 40 points on trying to hit 1 bid. So you'll get 40. You'll get the 40 back and 40 more if you hit your bid, in addition to the 60 points in this case that you would have gotten for hitting your bid. You're gambling on your bid. One caveat about the betting is you can only go up to 50 points unless it's the last round, then you can go up to 100 points. The goal of the resistance is you try to gauge when your card is going to be the weakest in the trick, and you want your card to be as strong as possible when it is the weakest in the trick. A little bit goofy, but let's do a little bit of an example. Maybe we'll zoom out just a tad here. But say this is maybe just a 3-player game, just for simplicity here. Say it was led a 9, and then a 6, and then when it comes to you, you have your, I think it's called a Kakame token. But when you play to the trick, you can choose, only when you play, whether the lowest card wins or not by placing out this Kakamimi token. How it works is you evaluate and you see what's the weakest. So the 5 is now the weakest. So the player who played the weakest would win, which was the resistance in this case. And then depending on that rank or what type of card was played, the player would get higher points for the higher value. So as you can see, if it's a 4, 5, or 6 in any of the suits, the non-trump suits, it would be worth 80 points. If this was maybe a 1, like this, that would only be worth 50. And if it was one of the cards that always loses, like the white flag, then it's only worth 30. So again, the resistance player has to choose whether they want to use this and flip the trick to be the weakest wins the second they play to the trick. So for example, if it was led 6 in that case, and then they played the 5, maybe they are a little bit nervous because if they play it like this, and then the other person plays this, then that player would have won the trick because that is the weakest. So this player is a little hesitancy, maybe being the hammer or the last in the trick is the best for them because they really want to know and they really want to guarantee that playing this is going to win them the trick because that's the only way they get points. And being on suit or off suit doesn't quite matter. So in this case, if it was led the 6 red, 5 red, and then this person was off suit, they would win because it's a 4, not that it's off suit. So maybe in a different example, if I played, or if the resistance player played this 2, then they would have won because just the 2 is lower than the green. It doesn't matter if the green is off suit. Here's an example of the instant win victory condition that the resistance has. Say it was led black, and then this person followed, and then when it comes to the resistance, they played a 5 black, and then played the Kakume. If you ever win with a trump card, the black suit, then you immediately win the game on that trick right away. Scary, you gotta watch out for it, it's pretty brutal. So like again, like in a different situation, maybe it was even led with this rare card and then someone played that black and then the Kakume player played this, they would, they'd be winning it because it's the lowest, the weakest card. But if it's the weakest card and it's a trump, they immediately win. Absolutely wild. Last thing as well, if they win just the one trick and it's the Kakume trick, then they actually qualify for winning a black crown at the end. Again, these black crowns go out to anyone who takes no tricks. So what's really cool is, since their whole thing is at winning at least one trick with the weakest, it doesn't kind of block them from still winning a black crown, which is super nice. And the very last thing is, if you play them in the 3rd round, every trick they win is worth 30 points. Next we have the Hermit, where their goal is kind of not to take any tricks at all. So if they take no tricks, they get 50 points. And if they take 1 or 2, they're in the red. But it's kind of strange because once they take 3 or 4, they're actually back into the high positive. And if they take 5, they win the game. So interesting character here, kind of an ebb and flow. Also, they have 2 abilities. One is before a trick, let's say this is their hand here, they can draw a card from the deck and then discard any card in their hand before they play to the trick. So they have a really cool cycle ability. Their other ability is that their white flags actually beat rares. So super wild. So they'll win a trick. So let's say if it was like a lead blue, and then this player over here played a rare, and then the Hermit played the flag, they would actually win this trick. In addition to winning this trick, which starts counting for down below here, they would get 30 points for doing that. And if it's in the final round, they get 100 points for doing that. Here's the last character in the original 5. This is the Berserker, and they are super wild. So what you do is you discard your whole hand of 5 cards, and you're going to be taking cards from the Berserker deck. So first off, you take this Berserker card, which is the strongest card in the game. It beats rares, it beats everything, but it loses, I guess I shouldn't have said everything, because it loses to the 1s in any suit. Very interesting. So you get that card, and then you shuffle these cards, and you draw 4 to fill up your hand. So in this deck, you have a lose, a rare, and then you have the 10s and all the suits. If you remember, the deck makeup goes 1 to 9 in those 4 suits, but as you can see on the bottom here, these all lose to the 1 of that suit. So pretty strong, but have a little bit of a kryptonite here. So then the goal of the Berserker is to win between 2 and 4 tricks. If they win all of them, they lose points, or if they win none or just 1, they lose points. Also, they don't have an instant win condition unless it's the 3rd round. And then the 3rd round, as the Berserker, if you lose all the tricks, then you win instantly. Also in the final round, if you have a black crown, which we're going to cover a little bit in the rules later, you can discard this to cycle your hand. In the Berserker's case, you can still use it, but you would be drawing from the leftover cards from the Berserker deck when you do. Alrighty, so we're back from all that character explanation. So, as you can see, the king over here has that king in their hand. The gambler has bid 3, and they actually use the 20 extra points that they got for being the gambler, and they're going to bet on their bid. And then finally, the resistance has their kind of bunny, I think it's a Kakume little token here, and the Hermit is ready to start drawing the deck. So actually we might move the draw deck closer to the Hermit just because they'll be using it a lot. In the first round, the player who just picked first, which was over here, this Antlers character, will lead to the first trick. So they'll play maybe just this 3 crab claw suit. So it is a must-follow game, but as you can see here, the gambler does not have a claw, so they can play whatever they want. They're going to play a 5, which is a trump suit, so they're currently winning. The resistance is going to just follow suit with the 8, and then finally the Hermit gets to do their little hermity action. They get to draw a card, and then they get to discard a card. So maybe they... Oh, what a wild Hermit hand. They're going to discard this. And then that means they're allowed to play this, and they're going to take that trick from the gambler, which is pretty saucy. So the Hermit's already getting wild. So then the Hermit would lead to the next trick, and again, they draw, and they can discard whatever they want. Oof, maybe they discard the 1 and play the 6. Maybe they're trying to win tricks, who knows. The King is going to play a rare. Gambler is just going to follow suit. And then finally, the Kakamimi is going to play a 2. So, King wins it. They're going to take this trick and then lead to the next trick. And what's interesting is you can see the card back, so everyone knows that they use their rare. Little does everyone else know they have another rare, spicy. So then they're going to lead to the trick with a 4. The gambler is terrified right now. They're trying to get the last 3 tricks. They're nervous because the Kakamimi is going to win. They are going to play their 7. I don't know what their plan is. And then this player is going to draw. Oh, wild. They are going to discard the 4 and play the rare. Oh my gosh. They're messing over the gambler so much. So play like this just continues. This character is going to play the rare. And a side note, you can play the rare or the white flag card, even if you had to, or you could have followed suit. So let's say that it was led red, and this was actually the King's hand. They can play the flag card. They don't have to follow suit. Then the gambler, dismayed by everything, is just gonna follow suit. And then finally, Crabs over here is also gonna follow suit, and they're wondering if they should use their Kakamimi. I guess they just will. So they won that one, because how this works, again, I hope I explained it, is that the lowest wins. And so they'll take that trick, do blue, 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 and then they're gonna lead the 8. And finally, the Hermit is going to draw and play the flag, which is wild. And then that's kind of just going to happen. So the gambler did win 1 trick. So moving this all around, let's clean it up here. So at the very end, you kind of evaluate everyone's points and if they got an instant win condition and yada, 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 because the resistance, again, could have won instantly if they, won the Kakamimi with the trump card, but they didn't, so that doesn't happen. You also evaluate any points and such. So the gambler, they miss their bid, oof, so they lose their bet. Then you would dole out points. So like the resistance, they won the trick with a 1, 2, or a 3, so they'll get 50. The King over here got 20 points for their 1 trick. Oh, or did they win? Yeah, they just won 1 trick, so they'll get 20 points. And then the Hermit, they lost 10 points or 30 points, oh my gosh, for winning 2 tricks only. Interesting of them to do that. Then you dole out the crown, so the Hermit won 2 tricks, so they won the most. So that comes over here. And then nobody took no tricks except the resistance. Their special thing is even if they took 1 trick through their Kakamumu, they'll still get a black crown. Any extra black crowns are just not used. And then you'll go to the next round. So all the players will just turn back in their roll cards. The Berserker will come back into play. And then you'll draft again. Again, the King's special ability is that that person's going to start the draft. They can't pick the King. So the antler person will start the draft and they'll pick whatever they want. And then you look out and you see whoever doesn't have a crown, they will draft first. And that's according to fewest points. So looking out over here, the gambler, or the old gambler, the Mickey Mouse pen over there, they only have 30 points. So they're going to draft after the King player. And then after that, it's going to be the Mr. Krabs player. And then finally, the champagne bottle is going to draft. So then again, you'll play the second round. If there was an instant win condition, that player would win. If not, you're going to see if maybe the champagne bottle, if they would have won a second crown, that would have been an instant win condition at the end of the second round. But if not, you're going to play the third round. Again, same instant win conditions, and then if none of those happen, whoever scores the most points wins. Now that you know how to play these 5 base characters, we're going to wipe this and I'll show you how to play the next 3 in the base game. Before we get to those 3 characters, I should note I didn't explain how you can spend the black crowns. In the 3rd and final round, you can spend any number of black crowns to discard any number of cards from your hand to draw that many back up. So say this resistance character at the very end, they had maybe 2 black crowns, and since they're not going to try to go for that final victory, and they got dealt this, they could, if they wanted to, maybe short-suited themselves twice, discard these 3, and then draw 3 back up. They would just discard a crown, and they could do that again. So maybe they wanted to discard this, and they discard the crown to draw 1 more back up. And that's how to spend the crowns in the 3rd round. Now we're going to talk about the 3 kind of advanced characters in the base game. So first we're going to talk about the Adventurer. The Adventurer's whole thing is they have a bunch of items. So they start off with a couple of these starter items, and then they're going to have a whole deck filled with items that they will get when they win tricks and level up. So the Adventurer starts off with 2 base items here, 1 kind of red item, 1 blue item. And these are just a pool of items. So you'll pick one of them from the blue and one of them from the red. Like for example, in the blue, maybe you pick the Timid Boots. And what this does is just lets you play last to the trick. So when it comes to you, it passes until you go to play. Or if you're leading, the lead just goes to the next person. And then maybe you pick this one, which just lets you go plus or minus 5 to your value of the card. So then the rest of the blue and red, they'll just get shuffled into all the other kind of black items in the deck. And then this goes to the side of your character. And this is just going to be a deck that you use for whenever you win a trick. Let me zoom out a little bit here. So say the Adventurer won this trick with that 8 blue. You'll put the trick to the right of here. You're going to flip the top card of the item deck, and then now you have a new item to use. So the Adventurer just wants more and more tricks. As you can see here, they just get kind of more points. It looks like in the middle here, getting 1 trick is the worst, I guess. But they do have an instant win condition if they get all 5. The other thing is, a lot of times, as you can see kind of here, the items that you collect will give you points or sometimes take away points. So maybe you want to use items that lose you points so that you have these items left over that give you points. I should explain how you use items. You can only use 1 item per trick. And when you use an item, you just take it and discard it. And then at the end of the trick, you will flip and get a new item. Some items are useful items. Like this map here lets you discard as many cards as you want and then redraw that many. Some of them are kind of weird. Like this one loses you 30 points. So you kind of want to use it, but what it does is it makes your hand go face up to the table, so a little bit wacky. And then finally, some of them are just points, like this crystal here. So this says it's worth 20 if it gets flipped into an original spot, like kind of this one just did. So if this was actually here, that'd be worth 20. Or as you can see on the bottom here, it's worth 30 if it's flipped up into one of the additional slots when you level up. So this one's kind of better when it gets flipped up out here. There's just various things like that. Like here's another example of those points things, and then other kind of potions or tools that you could use. So their whole thing is kind of winning tricks so you can level up and get possibly more points out over here on your items, but also, you know, winning tricks to get points for just winning tricks. Really cool character. Next is the Collector. First and foremost, no matter what, you can't win any crowns, so no gold crown or black crown. Your whole thing is you're trying to collect certain cards, either by winning tricks, or you have this little cat token, which lets you put this on a card, any card in the trick, when you go to play, and you will collect that card into your collection. So why are you collecting cards? Well, depending on the cards you collect, you're trying to make kind of melds or sets of cards, and those give you points. So maybe like a flush of 3 or a straight of 3 or things like that. Let's say in the middle of a trick, like this one, if someone leads a 9 and then the collector plays a 3, they can choose any card, theirs or previously played, to collect, and they just put their cat on it. So maybe they really wanted the 9. If they are leading, like the collector plays the 3, they can only place it on their own card. They don't have to collect it if they don't want to. There's kind of a reason not to collect it, not too big of a reason, but essentially they are putting the cat token out on cards that are in the trick to try to win them. Again, if the collector wins the trick, like let's say they led the 9 and this was the trick, they're just going to collect everything they won. So if they win a trick, they actually get all the cards in the trick. So they don't necessarily have to, kind of care about the token there if they win. So let's get some cards and show a little bit of the example of what they do with the cards when they collect them at the end of the round. Let's say these are the cards the collector collected. So 3 cards of the same type, or as a flush, so a flush of 3, that's worth 20 points. Straight of 3, like this 9, 8, and let's say this rare is a 7, because any rares are a wild. They can be any number. So a straight of 3 is worth 30 points. You can also get 3 of a kind of 9 is worth 40 points. You can get a straight flush of 9 to win the whole game. That's impossible. Good luck. And then you can only use 1 rare per combination, and you can only make 3 combinations. Finally, there's a penalty for every 2 cards left over that you don't use. Let's say we collected these, we use this for a flush, and this for a straight of 3. We had these 2 left over, we'd lose 10 points for those. Last and definitely least is the ruler. Their whole thing is they give out these task cards to the other players. So if the players finish setup, the ruler will hand out one of these task cards to them, and it's either take a green or don't take green, or take a blue, don't take a blue, or get this, take a red or don't take a red. And they have penalties on them. So if the player messes up and they don't do this, like if they accidentally take a red when they weren't supposed to, they'll lose 10 points. But if they don't, they'll get 10 points. And you might be like, okay. Well, if they succeed, the ruler also succeeds. So the ruler is going to get 10 points for everyone who completes their task card. The other thing the ruler does is with these tokens, this black one as well, that's impossible to see, they can play a card to the trick that might be of a different suit, and then they can put that token on there as if it is part of the suit. So say maybe it was lead, black, 8, and then someone followed suit with a 4, and this was the ruler's hand. They can play that 9, put the black square on top, and now they're going to win the trick because this is now a black 9. And that's how to play the expansion characters. So that is Tricktakers. Ooh, what a title. It is an interesting game, as you can tell maybe by a little bit of the length of the video. A good amount to cover, but is it worth it? Well, let's talk about production first. I think, genuinely, this is almost like by far the best production on a trick-taking game I've ever seen. The deck that has the playing cards, the actual playing cards, is so clean, so pretty. I love the back, Tricktakers, love that design, the tees throughout. And then the suit design is so clean. The suits are just this kind of like minimalistic, almost like two-tone vibe, and the deer looks great, the cute little, it's like a white flag. What is it called? A shirohata. Look at that. The cutest in the entire world. And the art on the character cards is amazing. Bit of an anime vibe. I think it's super, super well done. I love the variety of kind of the characters. Kind of a bit like the Root Vagabond. But yeah, they have so much personality, and when you see them, when you play with them, it kind of feels like it. Everything that they do, too, kind of fits a theme, right? So like the king has a pretty clean idea of just like win as many tricks, and then the powers that they get and kind of the scoring and everything fits with that. I'm getting a little bit into the the gameplay and the mechanics and such, but back to the production, just the gambler die is amazing. And all the tokens that come with it, be they, the crowns or like this, these two like kind of animaples here, all the way to, I don't quite know how to describe these. These are the points in the game. And they're rough, they're kind of sandpapery. They look almost like Altoids or kind of candy. And there's a thing when you sit down and play a game that I think people love to do is just kind of fiddle while you hear the rules, or kind of just poke around or play with the components and kind of get like a very tactile vibe going on. And these are one of the most tactile things ever. They make crazy noises when you rub them, you play them around, they feel great. They have like kind of ribs, you can put them together as like a little hug kiss thing. It's, people always want to say they want to eat them. It's kind of the most I want to eat that component since the eggs and Wingspan. There's just something to this whole production that brings people in, and even though I don't have like paste-ups in my copy, and I often, when I play it with people, I'll just have like a printout next to it, or whatever the characters do, I'll kind of just explain as we go. people are drawn in immediately because it just looks so amazing. Even though there's a fair amount of Japanese text, and the people I play this with don't speak Japanese, they're still drawn in because the production is absolutely amazing. But is it a good game? Again, at the start of the video, I said some people think it's their favorite trick-taking game ever. And this is coming from people who've played hundreds of Tricktakers. I have close friends that say this is their favorite Tricktaker ever. So first off, that should carry so much weight. I think anytime someone says this is their favorite or that's their favorite, it's always nice to investigate it, see what they like so much about it, and kind of see if it'll work for you. I think there's a lot of people watching right now that I think this could be your favorite trick-taking game. I really like it. I think it's interesting to, like I said, go from Nikosu Dice to this, because they're almost at other ends of the spectrum. Nikosu Dice is super clean. This is not the most clean. I'm trying to be not as rough, because I do think a lot of the times the rules are there for a reason. Like they almost have to exist in such a wacky game in concept, but sometimes it's like, ugh, like it could have been a bit smoother, right? Even just things that, high level, I didn't design this game, and obviously the designer played this way more, and there's rules for these, or there's reasons for these rules, but like the rule where there's only 2 black crowns and only 2 of them can go out, feels like, how often are multiple people getting no tricks? Just give out a black crown, doesn't really matter. I don't think so. Who knows? Who cares? But it just feels like sometimes with a game that has so many rough edges, could there have been sometimes a way to smooth one of them or 2 of them? And again, probably my biggest complaint. So maybe I shouldn't have led with this, but the fact that the game just has so many rules. In fact, I was in this thread on this Discord, and it was the biggest, probably in the whole Discord, the biggest conversation was about this game. And in this thread, so many people would have so many different rules disagreements. And what does the rulebook mean for this? And what's the hierarchy on what trumps what, with like the Berserker, or like different characters, right, who have different things, or like a rare card or a flag card, or all this stuff. The game has so much to it that, again, these rules are probably there for a reason, to kind of glue these together, or more like duct tape and squish these all together. But again, on that whole like complexity to depth ratio, a lot of complexity. And it's interesting because in the past I've said before that games with small hands aren't my favorite, just because, pigeonhole player, not a lot of agency, kind of a lot of forced plays in a way. So how does this game handle it is the drafting of the characters, right? Especially with characters that, like the Hermit, who let you cycle cards, or like the Gambler, who let you mulligan hands, or the Berserker, who lets you discard your hand fully, or the King, who lets you get a strong card. Like, there's so much hand mitigation to this game. And this is just, I just gave examples in the first 5, right? There's so many characters, especially in expansion that I haven't touched on. Woo! But there is so much mitigation in this game that then the small hand size is mitigated, right? The deal is super mitigated. So there's not a terrible amount that you could blame on like a bad hand. So then I guess the question becomes, does the game have a lot of depth? Does it need a lot of depth? And is that depth, whatever amount it may be, right for the game? I think it's perfect. And it's interesting to come at it from a point of view of like, there's a lot of rules to learn. This is a rough teach. It's an involved teach. I think once players are in the mindset, you're like, okay, this is kind of how the trick-taking works. This is how the characters work, and we're kind of just gonna learn as we go, and especially if like new characters come out. But it's a teach that has been overwhelming at times, and I think that maybe is another critique, is that the first play of this, first few kind of games of this is a bit much, especially with, there's like meta to the game, there's the resistance meta, like the Berserker meta, kind of players that bounce off each other, meta that you don't understand the first time you play the game. So this game, it's interesting because I would only recommend it to super advanced trick-taking players, and I would only recommend it to players who would want to play the game a lot. What helps is that the game is pretty quick. Once you get knowing what's going on, once you know the characters and once you get into it, it's a pretty quick game. 5 tricks a hand, only 3 hands at the most. I've noticed the cool thing is the expansion. It goes to points way more. Another kind of bigger complaint I have is that the points in the base game aren't as important, I don't think, than when you include the expansion. In the expansion, I think it is actually more 50-50. Whereas, like, maybe, again, this is my group who loves that kind of, like, game ending, let's shoot the moon, let's go for this kind of crazy moment, like a character victory in the first round. Woo! Like, I found that they'll push the game to ending early, more so than points. So like a 70-30 maybe, actually. The game itself has so many fun moments, so many interesting decisions. The draft is so much fun. The characters all feel amazing. Talk about asymmetry. I know people talk about the game Marco Polo because it does such a good job of having kind of base mechanics that work and then giving you characters with abilities that feel broken, like feel insanely broken. Like someone will draft or pick a character, at the start of the game, you'll be like, you kidding me? That's like an amazing power. And then you get an amazing power too that they think is overpowered as well. So it kind of feels like that. I know people call this kind of root trick taking. I can kind of see what they're going. I don't know if it's as much like that. I think it's just the roles and the characters that do things. I know the Vagabond and Root and the Adventurer in here are pretty similar, but I guess, I don't know, besides like having pretty asymmetrical powers and roles, I think that's the closest thing it is. But I genuinely feel that when you see your hand, you can make a good bet on which character you want. There's a good amount of flexibility in the draft, even if you're last. I think my personal preference is to include as many characters as possible, because not that the first 5 get stale, but there's kind of a bit of a meta that you want to move back or want to move beyond a bit quick. Maybe that's my last kind of con of the game, is I personally think, for me, at this point, the expansion is necessary. There's some super cool characters in there. There's some super deep, and maybe deep, again, isn't the right word, but like crazy characters, like the Time Traveler. And maybe I'll do a video for those, that whole expansion in the future. But essentially, have characters in that game that give you even more options, give you even more choices, and to be able to shuffle a huge deck of characters and flip them out for those 3 rounds and have them all be different for the 3 rounds makes it feel so cool. Seeing what combinations come out and which characters are going to be in a game makes me wish there was another expansion, and makes me even think about the design space this game has. And it seems so boundless, right? So I think it's a really great game with some rough edges. And I said that a few times. I guess another rough edge to me is like some of the characters are just like, maybe not the best. Like, this is kind of across the board, but the ruler, I never want to play with the ruler. In fact, I'll take it out. And I know many people do that just because it's not the most fun. You give someone a rule, and then you restrict them, and then you just like hope it works out, I guess. And then you're just like sitting there kind of just hoping that works out. Is that fun? I don't find it fun. A lot of people I play with don't find it fun. So, some characters, not the best. Or some characters like instant win conditions are impossible. The Collector, played a few times now, they try to get, 3 of a kind, flush, or, straight or whatever. And their instant win condition is like a royal flush of 9. Like, especially when you only can use 1 rare. Like, when is that ever happening? Whereas the Berserker in the 3rd round not getting any tricks, totally seen that happen. Resistance, winning with the trump, seen that happen a lot. I've done that. We actually had that happen in the first game we played. Someone didn't realize what was going on, and they led trump, and the Resistance won the game. And, or even like, I think the King is a totally possible thing. So this is what I'm talking about with rough edges. It gets to a point where some things are just like, is that really balanced? Will that really ever happen? But I think the game is worth it. I think it's so much fun. has amazing moments, gives players a ton to pick and kind of chew on. There's a lot of fun player interaction when you see someone's the Berserker and the Resistance and the Hermit in the round. You're trying to bounce off all the instant win conditions in a really fun way. It's cool. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of fun to it. Despite how smooth it looks, despite there's some roughness hidden beneath, I would give this the seal. So awesome. I genuinely think people who say this is their favorite Trick Taker, they have a pretty good point. And I could see playing this for a super long time, loving it, and here's to another expansion, because I'll definitely buy it because it is that much fun of a game. I hope that was informative. I hope that was fun. I hope in the future it is in English and it gets more available, because it is a tough one, bit of a bear to translate, a bit of a bear to kind of get. I'm talking about more cons. Oh my gosh, it's just a bit hard to get to the table and get out here and import, and there's a kind of a bit to it. So I do hope in some magical world it gets an English release and becomes the next hottest thing since Sliced Crew. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Bye.